So I mentioned in a recent video that it was time to say goodbye to some things because in my mind, success doesn't equal possessions. I'm all about now having great relationships and great adventures. However, when I bought my Jeep Wrangler 392, I fell in love with that Jeep and I thought that was going to be one that I was going to have for a very, very long time. It was the ultimate Jeep. Well, after a whole lot of things happening, you saw the title of the video, it was time to say goodbye. Welcome to TrailRecon, I'm Brad, and today on this episode of Coffee with One Take, where I don't edit anything, we just shoot this raw and keep it real, I'm going to tell you a story about how I bought and fell in love with my Jeep Wrangler 392, and then how it fell out of favor and now it has a new home. Now, I have some notes here to keep me on track so I don't ramble too much and we keep it to the point. But before we get started, I want to let you guys know that all Coffee One Takes are now going to be a podcast available over on Spotify. So if you want to listen to this on your car on your way to work or while you're on your way to your trip, you're welcome to do that. So I will have these now on Spotify. It's on Brad Coates Off Grid. I probably should mention that. I'll leave a link down below. Okay, let's start with the first time I drove the 392. It was actually in Moab at Easter Jeep Safari. I was invited to go drive one of the 392s at a pre-launch. And it was actually the first time I'd ever driven a pre-launch vehicle. And I figured, they'll just, have a little course that we can go goof around on. And well, they took, I think there was about 6 of us. So there were 6 groups, 6 vehicles. And it was led by Nina Barlow, who is an amazing person and an awesome tour guide. And she took us out south of Moab and let us get after it in these 392s. And I'm talking about getting on some rocks. We were climbing stuff. We were doing burnouts in the sand. We were just having a blast. We were doing drag races. I mean, it was unreal, and I fell in love instantly. It was the ultimate Jeep. It was the Jeep that we have all been begging Jeep to build for years. A V8 Wrangler JL. It was incredible. And my drive home from Moab was filled with nothing but thoughts of that 392. I got to do a bunch of cool stuff in Moab, the concepts and all the other things, and had some great adventures, but that vehicle was heavy on my mind the whole way home. And the only reason I didn't buy one the minute I got home was the price tag. I think they were $85,000, give or take, plus the dealers had $10,000 and $15,000 markups. And at the time, this was when the car market was just exploding. And so, I told Regina, I said, man, I would really, really, really love to have one of those, but I can't justify spending that much money for a vehicle that I'm gonna actually go take out on the trail and beat up. Like, that's a lot of money for a vehicle that you're gonna beat up. And what are they now? Like $95,000, $105,000? That's crazy. So I didn't buy a 392. But for the next 11 or 12 months, I thought a lot about it, and I have some friends that bought some 392s. I would see them out on the trail from time to time. Of course, I saw everybody's reviews of them, and I finally decided, that's the ultimate Jeep, and this is what I love doing. I love off-roading. I love having adventures. I want the ultimate Jeep to do that with, and so I ordered it. And it took about 3 months. I ordered it. I didn't buy one off the lot. I specifically ordered it. And when it arrived, the dealer called me, and I had a great relationship with the dealer. They weren't going to give any markups. They were just going to sell it to me at MSRP, which was nice. It was still extremely high. I think it was like close to $85,000. And I said, "Can I call you back tomorrow? Let me think about it long and hard." And I hem and hawed. I almost said no. And Regina told me to do what I feel is right. She wasn't pushing me one way or the other. Although I think that the price tag was probably a little sticker shock for her. And I called him back the next day and I said, "Yeah, I'll take it." And so I drove up to go get it. My son actually drove with me. And we picked it up, and instead of coming straight home, I took a very long detour and went straight for the Anza Borrego Desert and just got after it with my son in there for about 2 hours. So before I even parked it in my driveway, before I even had 100 miles on it, it was out on the dirt, and I was in love with the Jeep Wrangler 392. It was an incredible Jeep. It was incredible to drive on the road. It was incredible off-road. Yeah, I loved it. So that Jeep became my daily driver. And you know, fuel economy on that thing wasn't great. I mean, if I was getting 13 or 14 miles per gallon, you know, I was lucky. And let's be honest, it's a 392, and you know, I got a heavy foot sometimes. You know, that's why you buy a car like that. Just like, yeah, let's get on the gas for a minute. And it was fun, and I loved it. And we started building it up, and I started taking it off-road and started having some adventures with it. And things just didn't go right. Now, before I talk about all the things that didn't go right and why I sold it, let me talk about the highlights of that Jeep and what it was. So it was a red Jeep Wrangler 392 Rubicon. They're all Rubicons. It had the Extreme Recon package, so it had the 35-inch tires, although I put 37s on it. It had every option except the front-facing camera, which to go back and do again, I would have got the front-facing camera. Actually, it didn't come with a tow package, even though I told the dealer I wanted the tow package. So I actually had to buy the Mopar tow package kit and install it, which was a little more trouble than I expected. But it was fully loaded. It had everything. And I built it up and I drove it, and I just loved that Jeep. I didn't want to drive anything else, if I'm being honest. And I told Regina, I was like, this is my favorite vehicle. And I've had some really, really cool vehicles over the years, you know, not you know, cars, Mustangs and classic cars. And I told her, I said, this 392 is my favorite vehicle, and I'm keeping this thing for a long, long time. I'm working this up pretty good, don't you think? So why did I get rid of it? Well, after all this passion and love for this Jeep, and it was taking me on some incredible adventures. Well, let's go a few months after owning it, when I went to Texas to pre-run the TrailRecon Extreme Challenge at Maris Adventure Park. So we had the route planned, and I told Dirk, who is the owner of Maris, I was like, man, I want to bring the 392 and let's just go do this. And so it was going to be 3 days pre-running this before we actually made this route available to everybody, where you can get a badge, by the way. And we were out there and just having a blast. I mean, the Extreme Challenge, there's the regular challenge and the Extreme Challenge. The Extreme Challenge is tough, but the 392 was handling it like a dream. It was like 90 degrees. I was tired. I was sweating. It was filming. But it was fun. And I vividly remember that I remember looking down at my gas gauge and I'm like, yeah, I'm getting a little low, but it's the last day. And we're coming down this really steep decline, and I had about a quarter tank, maybe a little less than a quarter tank. And as I'm going down this steep climb, I'm flexing, and there's like it's not a V-notch necessarily, but it's a deep rut that I'm kind of straddling. And the Jeep dies. And I'm like, what just happened? And well, it dies, and so I lose power steering, and my steering wheel just instantly shifts to the right because there was a rock right in front of me, and so it hits that rock, the tires turn to the right, steering wheel goes right, and I can't get it started. And so Dirk was in front of me, and I'm on this hill, this kind of not really a good position. So I'm trying to get out of my vehicle, which is a little awkward because I'm on this hill, and there's a bank on the left side of me. And I tell Dirk, I'm like, I can't get it started. I've been trying and it won't turn over. And so we're like, all right, let's just tow you down and get it to flat ground. Well, Jeep owners, if you don't know this, you need to know this for now. If you can't get your vehicle in neutral if it won't start, there's a little neutral switch under the center console in front of the shifter. There's a little door you'll see, and you got to break that door open, and then there's an orange tab, and you got to pull that out. So I had to pull that out in order to put the Jeep in neutral, and then he had to strap me down the hill, which was really awkward. Once I got to the bottom of the hill, it started right back up. So what happened? I don't know what happened. What I know is that wasn't the last time that would happen, and I know that other people have had the same thing happen, where they're on a decline, not an incline, a decline. They have less than a quarter of a tank, and the Jeep will it will die because there's something wrong with the fuel take-up. I don't know what the answer is. I actually took it to the dealer, and they said they couldn't replicate the issue. I could replicate it. I actually did it on purpose once. I went down a hill and I had less than a quarter of a tank and it died. And then I pulled the switch, went down to the bottom of the hill, started right back up. And so it happened probably 5 or 6 times. But that wasn't a deal breaker. I could live with that. I mean, I just know that I don't let my fuel tank get that low when I'm off-road, which you really shouldn't do anyway. I mentioned my fuel economy on-road wasn't great, but it was what was expected. Off-road, my fuel economy was pretty horrific compared to all the other Jeeps that I have. And when you're off-road, you don't expect your fuel economy to be great. But when I was off-road, sometimes I would be getting 8, 7, 6 miles to the gallon. And for me, you know, I'm doing a lot of idling because I'm hopping out, camera stuff, getting back in. And so I would burn through fuel really quickly. If I had the trailer, oh my gosh, forget it. Like, I had to bring extra fuel. That 392 is absolutely thirsty. But again, not a deal breaker for me. I can live with those two things. Now let's fast forward to when I was leading a group run, and this was probably 3 months after that first fuel incident. And I was leading a group of about 10 people, and we were having a great time, and I was getting ready to climb up this hill. This is a pretty steep hill. It's one of those hills where, you know, each person waits to the bottom until the other person gets to the top, and it's a good little climb. There's a tiny little rut getting up there. And as I'm coming to the bottom of the hill, I get a notification on my dash, 4-wheel drive no longer available. I don't remember what it said exactly, but that's what it really meant. There was a red light on there and it said your 4-wheel drive system needs service or it's no longer available. I don't know. I no longer had 4-wheel drive. And I was like, that's odd. So, you know, I shut the vehicle off, opened the door, closed the door, restarted, still there. I'm like, all right, well that stinks, but I'm in a Jeep Wrangler 392. I got 37-inch tires. I can make it up this hill, no problem. So I get after it and I start slipping and slipping and slipping and I can't do it. And Regina's behind me. She's actually part of the group in her, not this Jeep, in her yellow Jeep. And I can't get up this hill. And I'm trying for the life of me. I mean, I'm really like trying to send it up this hill and I'm just spinning those rear tires. I've got no front tire. I've got no 4-wheel drive. So those front tires aren't doing anything. And I can't turn the locker on because I can't put it in 4-low. So I'm embarrassed. And I'm also upset at my Jeep. So what had to happen was I had to back down, which was a little uncomfortable. If you ever back down on a hill, it's a little, you know, a little rutted out and it's kind of steep and you're kind of uncomfortable. I had to back down. Regina went up ahead of me and she had to get to the top and then I had to get to a point where I could get as high as I could and then I winched off of her to get to the top. Everybody else in my group, and I'm talking about Toyota 4Runners and a bone stock Jeep Wrangler JK on street tires with no lockers. Everybody, that guy made it up. Everybody made it up the hill, no problem. I couldn't do it. That just goes to show you how important 4-wheel drive is. It also tells you that 37s and 470 horsepower aren't going to get it done every time. So, yeah, so the rest of the trip, we were base camping. I actually rode with Regina because I was like, I'm not doing that again. That stinks. So when I got back to San Diego, I was able to drive. It drove fine. I just didn't have 4-wheel drive anymore. I took it to the dealership. They assessed it, and I guess I didn't realize it at the time, but the 392 has a very different transfer case than the standard Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. It's clutch-based. And those clutches were burnt out, and I had less than 30,000 miles on that thing. And it was very disheartening. Now there is a different interval for changing the fluids in the 392, and now if I know what I know now, I would have changed that fuel a lot more often. They couldn't order the parts for the internals of that. They had to order an entire new transfer case. So I had to wait a few weeks, and they did order a new transfer case, they installed it, and it was fine. A little disappointing though, right? Like, I mean, you should never lose 4-wheel drive in a Jeep, right? That should never happen. And that was in the back of my head forever after that. But it wasn't the kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. I didn't sell it because of that, but that was in the back of my mind. And by the way, I know 2 other people, friends of mine, that have Jeep Wrangler 392s that had the same exact transfer case problem. They had to replace their transfer case. Hi, hon. How you doing?
Hi, sorry.
It's okay. And so she just got home from the store. She didn't know I was in here filming. And it's coffee one take, guys. We keep it real. And so it was interesting to hear that there were other people who were having this issue. And so I think it's kind of an Achilles heel for the Jeep Wrangler 392. But I didn't decide to sell it then. However, there's still more to this story. So a common problem with Jeep Wrangler JLs, and I'm not sure Gladiators, I know JLs for sure, is the rear locker goes out. There's a sensor in there and it goes out. Well, I had that happen. Okay, another reason to go to the dealer, get it fixed, et cetera, et cetera. At this point, I'm just like, what's going on with this Jeep? I bought one of those tasers to carry with me just in case, but they were out of stock. And they replaced the sensor, and so I was back up and running, off-roading, having adventures, doing my thing. The locker went out again, and I hadn't received the taser because it was still on back order. So I took it back to the dealer. And I said, guys, this is not okay. This is twice. And they said, well, if it happens a second time, our solution is to replace the rear axle. I was like, that seems extreme. They're like, yeah, but that's what we're told to do. So I had to wait 6 weeks with no rear locker. And if you can't engage the rear locker, you can't engage the front locker. So I had no lockers until they could order a new axle. The new axle came in, and lo and behold, guess what? They ordered a front axle, not a rear axle. So they kindly replaced the sensor, and yeah. That Jeep had become extremely unreliable. For the amount of money that I paid for that Jeep, it should be flawless at 35,000 miles. I shouldn't have had any issues. I'm pretty tolerant. I don't mind a thing or two happening. I understand that things happen, and I'm hard on my vehicles. I admit that I'm hard on them. I tow with them. I don't off-road them on easy terrain. And that was a 382, and I got after it a little bit, especially in the sand. It was a blast. But I need a vehicle that is going to be reliable, that I can have confidence in, that I can depend on, that I don't have to worry, am I going to get stuck when I'm out on the trail? Is my four-wheel drive going to go out and leave me stranded again? Am I going to need a locker, and is it going to be there when I push the button? Those are things I shouldn't have to think about when I'm out on the trail. And I imagine that my case is probably extreme for the Jeep Wrangler 392. I know people that have Jeep Wrangler 392s. There are probably people that are watching this right now that have had their Jeep Wrangler 392 and never had any issues. Flawless. And they probably love them. They probably love them the way that I loved mine when I first got it. But I fell out of love with it. I convinced myself, I was like, you know what? I will just keep this as kind of a hot rod. I won't take this on overland trips anymore. And that just doesn't work for me. I need my vehicles, if I'm gonna do maintenance on them, if I'm gonna, make payments on them, if I'm gonna pay insurance on them, I need them to be part of what I do. I need them to be part of TrailRecon. And so I was just like, it doesn't make any sense. I have this hot rod sitting in the driveway. It's the most expensive vehicle I've ever bought in my life. And I can't use it the way I want to. So I said goodbye. And I got to tell you, the decision wasn't that hard. It was kind of freeing. Once I finally did it, I was like, yeah, it's good to be rid of that. It sucks that I don't have a 470 horsepower Jeep anymore, but I don't have the burden of a very expensive vehicle that wasn't performing very well. And so I'm not trying to bash on Jeep. I'm not trying to bash on Jeep Wrangler 392. I just wanted to share the story of why that Jeep is no longer part of TrailRecon. Because a lot of people are asking, when's the next 392 content? When is that going to happen? And I feel bad because I fell in love with that. I know a lot of you guys fell in love with that Jeep. There's an emotional attachment I get with vehicles, and I definitely had one with that. But it was time to say goodbye. So there you have it, guys. That's why I sold the Jeep Wrangler 392. Okay. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Coffee One Take. More videos to come about the fleet of vehicles. In fact, this one here behind me is my son's Jeep Wrangler JK. It used to be my son's. Actually, it's mine, and he used it for a period of time. But I've been trying to think about what to do with this, and again, go back to that video I talked about recently where I said that I just need to let some things go. And so I'm gonna create a little bit of content with this, and then we're gonna say goodbye to this Jeep. So more to come on this little two-door JK. I hope you've enjoyed hanging out with me today, guys. Until next time, safe travels.